Hello. I just finished reading a recently published novel that I found very moving and unique, and so I hope more readers discover and discuss this book. It's Absence by Issa Quincy. This is a debut novel, and I first became interested in reading this when I read an interview with its author where he mentions that he was advised by Ali Smith, and it feels very apt that these authors formed a connection with each other because not only are they both daring in their idiosyncratic writing styles, but they also have such an empathy and love for humanity. So this story follows an unnamed narrator as he has a number of encounters with various individuals who discuss people from their pasts and stories from the past. And so we don't know too much about this narrator himself. We get small details about his life, about how he had an argument with a partner in Madrid and how his parents had separated at a certain point and how both of them have since died. And he reflects upon his early life when his mother read a poem to him, a poem which from finding lines from it turns out to be the ballad of Reading Jail by Oscar Wilde's, which is a poem that isn't normally, I think, read to children, but which forms this sense over the course of the book about our place in the world and about the harm we encounter, about how people harm each other either intentionally or unintentionally, and whose humanity is gradually taken away through oppression and difficult circumstances. And this kind of sets a tone throughout the entire book as he has all of these encounters with people who are recounting their own stories, but also their connections with other people, these connections which have been lost, the absence of people in their lives, and how the new connections we form kind of act as stand-ins for these connections that we have lost with other people in the past, and also about this tension between wanting to be seen in our lives and also wanting to be anonymous. And all of these issues are explored throughout these encounters with many different individuals and relating stories of their lives, which would be otherwise lost except through the telling and him forming connections with these various different people. So right off the bat, I'll say if you're a reader who needs a story with a plot that has a kind of a full arch to it and characters that you can really know and fully understand, then this probably isn't the kind of book for you. It's much more a meditative story that is a novel, but it also feels like a strange hybrid between a memoir, a documentary, and a book of poetry, because so much in this book is very lyrical in how it's written and how it's reflecting upon the human condition and our various connections with each other, how fleeting these connections are, but how the stories we take from other people become a part of ourselves and our lives. And there's a couple lines in this book which I think really embody what this novel is about. So he writes, "To me, there remain certain things, many things that do not require words to be understood. The change in her gaze, the contortion of her posture, the manner in which her smile would fade and silence seeped into her person whenever her thoughts distracted her." And so much about this book is about observing the people in front of us, not just what they're saying, but also their body language and the things that are left unsaid, the absence of words as well as the presence of words. And also there's another line in this book where he writes, "In speaking, the insensible is often rendered into further insensibility, and the chaotic is given only a brief form that ultimately remains incomprehensible." How there is so much about our lives and our experiences and our emotions and the very being of our lives that we cannot articulate, we can't put into words and contain, but through our connection of speaking and really observing and paying attention and taking care to understand other individuals, we can appreciate their existence and their complexity and everything about their lives. And I just love how this novel is so attentive to other people in this way, to really pay attention to them and speak to them and get to know them as people, and how this relates to our own lives. And there's another line from this. I'm not going to keep reading, but there's many different quotes that I took down from this book, which I think is always a good sign of a book, that it's really touching you and moving you, that you want to record these different observations, where he says, "Such stories that over the years have proliferated in me and latched onto me, ones as happens sometimes that I cannot tear myself from, I cannot escape. No, they remain, even now, tangled in me, essentially so, as if they inexplicably sustain the very mechanism that causes each foot, each day to move in front of the other, and each breath to pull in only at last to release again." And how all of these stories that he collects and these encounters he has with other people become a part of him as he is moving throughout his life. And so really this forms so much about his existence, which we can't know. If he was relating, his biography and all of his thoughts and emotions, really these are the things which make up his life. And so we do get little details about how he moves to different places and takes sort of temporary jobs in a restaurant, or at one point it recounts how he moves to the state of Maine, to a sleepy little town in Maine where he becomes an archivist. And of course, because I grew up in the state of Maine, I wanted to know more about this. I was like, oh, what town is this, and why did you move to Maine? But yeah, we don't get too many details about his actual life. But I was kind of okay with that, because I felt like that wasn't the central point of this book. And it was really interesting how I was reading along with it. It made me think about the writing of Rachel Cusk and how she does this in her writing, where often, especially in the novel outline, there is a central narrator who is unnamed, and we don't know much about this narrator's life, except what is being projected onto her by the people that she encounters. And so mainly we are listening to other people discuss their own lives and what they reveal about their own lives. And Rachel Cusk is an author that I have often struggled with, because I can find this quite challenging when there is a narrator who is consciously not letting you know anything about their own lives, that is resisting divulging details about this. And as a reader, this can be frustrating at some points, because I want to know who I'm reading about. But at the same time, I understand why that Rachel Cusk does this, and the narrator of this novel does this, in that once we know certain details about this character's lives and their past and their identity, that we will place our own interpretations upon them. And that is something that these novels resist doing, because this will shape how we feel about and understand these characters' lives. And so they want to hold back from this so that we can really get to know them as another human being rather than having all of these preconceptions about their lives based on these details. But Rachel Cusk is a writer that I've struggled with slightly, and it was interesting because after I finished this book, I went and was trying to look up other reviews about it, and I went on Goodreads, and at the time of making this video, there's only 5 other reviews of this book. Most of them are quite short. A couple of them are quite dismissive, but there's one review which is longer and which I thought was very thoughtful by Katya N. And she makes this comparison to Rachel Cusk as well, and is talking really about how for her, Cusk's writing is more successful in its structure, in that when we're counting these stories and these encounters with other individuals. In Issa Quincy's book, he makes a separation between the character who is speaking to the narrator and things that they are recounting from the past, which are set in italics, and so kind of separate the text in a way I think to make it more understandable, whereas in Rachel Cusk's book, this all kind of moves together and all of the narration is of a piece. And so for Katya N, felt that this just all flowed together better in Rachel Cusk's writing, whereas I take a different point of view, wherein I feel like the way this is kind of structured and composed, it does make it easier to understand these different sections, because it can become quite confusing, because not only is he speaking to another person, but that person is recounting the story of someone that they've known. But then sometimes within that story, there will be another account of another story. And so there are these layers that go through. And so I became confused at some points of like, wait, whose story is this, and which layer are we in these different encounters? And so I think the italics in this novel do help to create this separation. But also, my main issue with Rachel Cusk's writing is I feel like the way that these narrators observing the world around them and having these encounters and listening to other people tell their own stories, it feels like there's this judgmental quality to it, where the narrator is looking at and forming judgments about other people, sometimes quite rightly, but in a way which feels like they are exposing these other individuals around them, while the narrators themselves are remaining anonymous. Whereas in this novel, I feel like there is this tremendous empathy to it and openness of listening to other people as a way to really try to understand and appreciate their individual lives and the struggles that they are going through. And there are so many issues that this novel is dealing with. There is drug addiction that is formed out of first pain relief drugs that are taken, and how this forms an addictive habit, about people who are rejected by their families because of their identity, of their sexuality, who are forced to remain at the margins of their family and of society, of people that experience large-scale political and national conflicts, and how that affects these individuals' lives over a long period of time, and how that forms their relationships, and the losses of connection in people that they love and that are friends of theirs and their family and their partners, and how it forms these schisms in lives and forms these absences in their lives which remain with other people, and in forming all of these other connections with people that the narrator encounters. It's kind of embracing and holding these stories which would otherwise be lost, and also really seeing people for who they are, and appreciating them as individuals who are struggling. And I feel like there is such a warmth and such a good sense of humanity to this novel that even though I didn't know where the stories were going to go next or the meaning of them or how they necessarily all held together, in finding surprising connections and points of connecting with each other as individuals, as other human beings, that I found so beautiful and powerful, that it builds to something much bigger and moving and emotional and so yeah, I just got so drawn into this account and moving through these different encounters and stories that he's told. And so I found this so touching and beautiful on a number of different levels, and I think it's such a striking and powerful new voice in fiction. So I'll be really excited to see what this author produces next. Hopefully he'll publish more books, and yeah, I think it's a wonderful novel. So I'd really love to hear if you have read this book, or if you're interested in reading it now, or if you've read anything else like this, or what you think about Rachel Cusk's writing yourself and making this comparison. And also Katya N in this review, she makes a lot of good points in it, and talks about this book in a really interesting and complex way, but also likens it to the writing of W.G. Sebald, which I think is a very apt reference as well for this book, in just seeing sort of pieces coming across different pieces and different images, whether that's a photograph or in this novel a bottle of perfume, and how that scent connects to a whole past and relationship and connections that were formed in the past. I think this is a really interesting continuation on of that style of narrative. But yeah, I would love to hear if you've read other books that are kind of in this vein, even though I think what this story does is very unique. But thank you for watching me talk about this book, and I hope you're doing well and reading good things, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.